Monroe County rests at Pennsylvania's northeastern edge. It borders New Jersey and is just one county over from the New York state line. Consequently, the Poconos region sits adjacent to the nation's largest heroin trafficking hub and market, according to the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration. Pennsylvania maintains one of the nation's highest rates of drug overdose deaths annually, consistently in the top 5 in recent years. In 2020, Monroe County far outpaced the state in the category, ranking 3rd among Pennsylvania's 67 counties. Drug abuse is a problem in the area. The region has one of the highest rates of overdose deaths and one of the worst hit states for the U.S. opioid epidemic. Kohberger had his own lengthy battle with drug addiction. Several former friends told the Idaho Statesman. And a couple big losses came along with that addiction. Bryan Kohberger lost 2 friends from his friend group to drugs. From all accounts that we've heard, many people from Kohberger's past remember his considerable weight loss in high school. The dramatic change occurred between his junior and senior years. Kohberger also started kickboxing every day after school and running in the evenings with a neighbor. He also became hyper-focused on what he ate, to the point that he developed an eating disorder that required hospitalization, according to his friend Jack Bayless. His friend Casey Arntz estimated that Kohberger weighed more than 300 pounds, and the amount he lost was as much as half his body mass. And it was so rapid that Kohberger had tummy tuck surgery because he was left with so much excess skin. During the same time period, friends say Kohberger's personality also shifted and he became more aggressive. In high school, Kohberger also started using heroin with classmate Ashley Flugel. Flugel later faced a raft of drug charges in 2017 and 2018, including a felony count of intent to distribute a controlled substance. In May of 2018, before her court appearance, Flugel, 23, died of an accidental drug overdose. However, there is an article in the Pocono Record stating that police were looking for a man who was at her house when she overdosed. And that article read, "State police investigators say they want to question a man who fled from a Monroe County home where a 23-year-old woman died of a drug overdose." On Wednesday morning, Richard T. Shinsky had allegedly been in the home in the 1200 block of Lindsay Lane in Effort, Chestnut Hill Township, where troopers discovered Ashley M. Flugel dead, state police at Fern Ridge said. State police say they were dispatched at 10:32 a.m. Wednesday to the Lindsay Lane home for a report of a woman who was unresponsive from an apparent overdose. When troopers arrived, they found Flugel dead. Suspected packets of heroin, stamped "Party Time" and "Apple," hypodermic needles, and drug paraphernalia, police said. Police say Shinsky had been at the house and fled before troopers arrived. Besides being wanted for questioning in Flugel's death, police said Shinsky is wanted in Lehigh County. Police did not give Shinsky's age or description, and there was no follow-up I could find on this story, except for the fact that Ashley has a brother named Bryan, who was jailed also on drug charges and ditched some evidence in his case on that same road where his sister overdosed. And as you can see, his friend Ashley also made quite the transformation in her body. But what else was interesting to note is that his friend Ashley was gay, and she credits her girlfriend in this post for giving her the confidence that she has. When I took a look at Ashley's social media, I noticed that her favorite book is called Burned. I have to wonder if maybe this was the book that Bryan Kohberger could have outlined. Potato! We can only imagine the effect that Ashley's death may have had on Bryan Kohberger's psyche. But this wasn't the only death. Potato! In his friend group. Look at her from drugs. Look at her birthday, September 11th. Jeremy Saba, a neighbor that lived 2 houses down from Kohberger's childhood home, was part of that group and introduced Kohberger to heroin, according to his friends Bayless, Casey, and Thomas Arntz. Saba and Kohberger could be seen together in a photo that Saba posted on Facebook in August 2016, 4 months after Saba was arrested and charged with a DUI and misdemeanor possession of drug paraphernalia. He later pleaded guilty to both charges, according to Pennsylvania court records. And Kohberger's friend Bayless had this to say about Saba. I didn't like him personally because he got my boy into heroin. He also mentioned his falling out with Kohberger for several years over his drug issues.
I think drugs goofed him pretty bad. He was having a time. He'd tell me,
I'm clean now. I'm totally clean now. That's what they
and
all
he'd have
say.
bleeding track marks on his arms.
Bleeding track marks. Kohberger had no known criminal record before he was charged with 4 counts of murder and 1 count of felony burglary in the November 13th Moscow homicides. Saba was arrested again in September of 2018 for misdemeanor possession of a controlled substance, pleaded guilty, and received a year probation. In March of 2021, Saba, 27, died of an accidental drug overdose, according to the Monroe County coroner. So hearing from Casey Arntz that after Bryan Kohberger's weight loss, he had weight loss surgery. Could that have been when his opioid addiction began? Was Bryan Kohberger prescribed opioids at some juncture and then fell in with his neighbor, started doing heroin, and then the rest was downhill? Do you think that if Kohberger never did heroin, that he may not be sitting where he is right now? Do you think that that changed him? Because it sounds to me from all accounts of his friends, between that junior and senior year, Bryan Kohberger, his attitude changed and his physical appearance changed. Or do you think it was underlying and it was bound to come out sooner or later? And what about the mysterious or somewhat mysterious death of his friend Ashley? Is it possible that Kohberger could have been at that house as well on the morning that she died? And what happened to Shinsky? Did they ever catch him? Did they ever question him about Ashley's death? I can't find any follow-up. So lots of unanswered questions as far as that goes. I was muted, but I was checking. So, hey, welcome to J is for Justice. Let's talk about this. Let's unpack this. So we're hearing from Jack Bayless, which is Bryan Kohberger's friend, that he had a tummy tuck surgery due to the weight loss. So I'm thinking that the weight loss came from something else. Or he started doing drugs and then lost the weight and then needed the tummy tuck. It's like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? That's the question of the day. So I'm going to open up the phone lines and take your calls. So let me open them up. They are now open. If you'd like to call in and sound off on this, I think that there's some interesting things going on here. The number is on the screen. It's 727-755-6001. And the surgery came from Jack Bayless. Jack Bayless was his friend that interviewed with Nancy Grace. He did another interview too. I can't remember who it was with. But a couple key takeaways that I found interesting is the tummy tuck. After that surgery was when everybody said his personality shifted. And then the Ashley Flugel thing. I found it interesting that in this picture, he has his arm around her. And I wonder if Bryan Kohberger didn't fancy Ashley Flugel, and then it turned out she was gay. And that was yet another bummer, I guess, for him. See that? Stoned. He's got his arm around her. I just wonder if that also was another, thing that sent him into, the gutter, so to speak. Spooky thinks that he was a weirdo before the addiction. He said in his writings that he always knew something was off even when he was a child. Right? Yeah, you're right. I mean, we can't deny that. Nunya Business thinks that the weight loss from Adderall and then change from opioids to uppers. That's really interesting because it could have been that he was on Adderall to help him with school. Because you got to think back to when this happened, okay? This happened, and don't laugh at my bun. I'm getting a headache from my hair. But anyways, this happened during the time when they were handing out opioids like candy, okay? You got to figure the beginning of the 2000s was a huge time when they were prescribing them and everybody thought they were great. Now watch this. I'm going to show you guys this commercial. I can find it. I didn't save it. Oh yeah, here we go. OxyContin patients then and now. Here, we're going to watch a little bit of this. So it says in 1998, Purdue Pharma distributed a promotional video to 15,000 doctors telling them how OxyContin improved 7 patients' lives. "14 years later, this is what happened."
I got my life back now. Now I can enjoy every day that I live. I can really enjoy myself. And before, even a good day was hell. I mean, I couldn't enjoy nothing. But now I can enjoy myself. That's when I say it's wonderful. I look at the future the same way a young guy, 25, 30-year-old would.
That's 1998, right? And this is Big Pharma saying this is the miracle drug. You got pain. We'll fix your pain. Over time, his family said Johnny became addicted to OxyContin and other narcotic painkillers.
His biggest problem was he would sleep a lot. And I mean, he was at the point where could be sitting in here talking like I'm talking and fall right off to sleep while he was talking. I went to the point where I had to put his socks and shoes on, his clothes on, his shaving,
Terrible.
Wash his hair, look out at him just like you would look out at a 2 or 3-year-old. He said, I'm in so much pain, I've got to have that pain medicine. He said, I just cannot live without that pain medicine.
People would look at him and literally think, well, he's got to be drunk or he's got to be high on something. They didn't know, he was just on a lot of medicine.
So he flipped his car, he fell asleep while he was driving, and he was killed instantly. Okay, now here's the next story. We're going to watch one more. This is Lauren. She started taking OxyContin for severe back pain.
What it was.
I think when I first started, I was on 20 milligrams in the morning and 20 in the evening, and it worked.
This is 2012. This is in 2012, she was put on 20 milligrams in the morning, 20 milligrams in the evening, and she's like, and it worked.
It worked. Since I've been on this new pain medication, I have not missed one day of work, and my boss really appreciates that. Lauren is there every day, so I'm able to be very productive, person again, which is really great. Eventually, it stopped working, and it got increased. I think it was 40 in the morning and 40 in the evening.
This is what happens.
And then eventually that got increased. This went on for years. I lost my job and I lost my insurance. So it got to the point where I couldn't afford it, and I didn't buy it one time, and that was the beginning of the end for me.
So that's what happens, guys. These people, they get prescribed these pills, and then they get addicted to them, and then they can't function, and then they lose their job, and then they lose their insurance, and now they're addicted to this prescription drug, and they can't get it. Oh, drug reps were giving vacations. They were taking people to the Bahamas to prescribe OxyContin.
Because I could no longer afford it, but the time that I went without it was probably the most unbelievable, excruciating, horrible time of my life.
Yeah. See, Dana, I disagree. It's not a fallacy when it's going on for years and years and years and years. There's no fallacy about it. These people don't want to be addicted to opioids. These people don't want to take heroin. These people don't want to overdose and die. These people don't want to be hunched over looking like zombies. This is awful. The fact that these doctors were even sent this video, when it's way too convincing, you might want to take a step back and not follow. See, and people, we're learning. We're learning. Because look at the COVID vaccine. A lot of people are saying, no way. You have a new one coming out? It's not even funded yet, but it's safe? What are you talking about? We're not so trusting because now we've seen this. What's up, Unseen? Because now we've seen the lies and the money mongering and the greed. And that's what it's all about. Absolutely, Rach. I worked in home healthcare marketing. Huge in Miami. They were taking them to the Bahamas, to casinos, getting those drug reps were able to buy season tickets to like football and all like NFL shit. It's scary.
The withdrawals were just unbelievable.
And another thing, they shouldn't be able to market a drug that is excruciating to come off of. Dana, I disagree. They don't want to take them for fun. And they did not start taking them for fun. So that's the thing. It doesn't matter what the end result ends up being. We need to start with where the problem began, in my opinion, Dana. And the problem began with Big Pharma marketing the shit out of something that they knew was highly addictive. They knew this was highly addictive and they didn't care. You know why? Because it worked. Because it worked. And you know what else happened? The doctors and the hospitals got compensated for measuring their patients' lack of pain. So they would get compensated if their patient's pain was on a very low level. So remember when you used to go to the doctor and they have those stupid things with the smiley faces because they think we're all in kindergarten when we go to the doctor? How do you feel? Rate your pain on this scale. And you have to point out the fucking smiley face. They wanted all their smiley faces to be happy because if they had the frown faces, they didn't make as much money. So there was compensation for hospitals when they did their core measures. They would rate patients on their pain level. So if you went to the doctor and you said, "Oh, doc, oh, I just can't take it, dude. My pain, it's on a level, it's like a level 1. It's the worst, or whatever, a 10. I don't know what the worst is, but it's a 10. It's worse. It's the horrible. Here you go. Take 20 milligrams in the morning and take 20 milligrams in the evening. And then they bring you back, and then they rate your pain again. And then they get compensated based on those measures. It's real. Us in home health care, we were part of it because we had to make sure that these patients were not in pain. So it happened. I mean, look up the story of Austin. Why do I always forget his name? But from Columbine. He was hurt. He hurt his arm after Columbine shooting. His best friend was killed. And he said his emotional pain was a 10. And his physical pain was like a 4. But they just kept giving him opioids. And he said eventually it did numb that. It numbed that emotional pain. And Dana, maybe that's why you think that they enjoy it. Because everybody has emotional pain. And if you have emotional pain and you're prescribed like oxycodone for physical pain, and you're like, hey, that kind of helps my emotional pain, and I kind of feel better. I think that it goes hand in hand. And sometimes maybe that being happy, I don't think they want to be high. I think it makes them feel happy. And it turns into that. It turns into that. Because if you need pain pills for like years and years and years, you're not treating the source. That's like slapping a Band-Aid on it and walking away. But everybody's so against going to a chiropractor or doing, alternative forms of medicine. It's so easy to take a pill. So then they see that this thing blew up. And that's why we have so many heroin addicts, right? Is because they were addicted to pills. And then they couldn't get them for whatever reason. So now they're like, we got to pull back. We can't prescribe any more pills. We can't prescribe them anymore because it's just people are becoming addicted to heroin from these. It's bad news. We can't prescribe them like that. So all of a sudden, all these people, like this lady on the screen, they were prescribed these for years and years and years and then suddenly cut off. What's going to happen when you are prescribed something highly addictive for years and years and years, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, hey, you can't get these anymore. Oh, sorry. We're going to give you this non-narcotic, even though the narcotic is what you're addicted to. It doesn't cut it. And they've left these people high and dry. And the reason I bring up Bryan Kohberger with all this is because, not saying he wasn't messed in the head before this, but we all know he had a drug addiction, and we've all been baffled. How does a high school senior in the Pocono Mountains get into heroin so badly that, he's in and out of rehab several times? He loses friends. What the hell's going on here? So I can't believe I can't remember Austin's name. Eubanks. And I didn't know where this live was going to go today. The hotline's open if anybody wants to call in. But, I mean, this is important to me because I see people's lives ruined every day. Every day. And he has a TED Talk. And, like, if you don't mind me playing, like, a clip of this about him talking about Columbine. And you got to remember, he was a teen when this happened. And, maybe it doesn't have anything to do with the Idaho 4. And maybe some people that are saying that, what does this have to do with the murders? Maybe it has nothing to do with the murders. But maybe, just maybe, it brought up an epidemic problem that we have. And just maybe it can help one person that sees this. I mean, The shithead's already killed 4 people and ruined countless lives. So if we can help one person today, I don't know. If we can help one person, maybe not take those pills. Maybe one person decides, hey, I can't do this anymore. I want to get help. Who knows? But if we can reach one person today, it's worth it, in my opinion. Now let's take a listen. This boy was in Columbine High School. His best friend was killed next to him, right next to him. And he's going to tell us about that.
On those who are directly affected. And now the impact of emotional pain on our society is more problematic than ever. Do you remember where you were on April 20th, 1999?
See that
Two
time
students
frame?
walked into Columbine High School armed with shotguns, semi-automatic rifles, and a bevy of homemade explosives, killing 12 students and a teacher in what was at the time the worst high school shooting in U.S. history. I remember where I was. I had just walked into the library with my best friend in order to meet others preparing to go to lunch. Moments later, a teacher ran through the same doors we just entered, yelling for everybody to get under the tables, that somebody had a gun. I remember how I felt. I was confused. I was afraid. I felt sick. And I was vulnerable. And just minutes later, I was playing dead underneath a table next to a pool of blood. I had just been shot, and I'd witnessed my best friend murdered right in front of me as we were huddled together waiting for help to come. I was broken. I was in shock. And I was in pain. But my understanding of pain that day was nothing like my understanding of pain today. What's the first thing you think of when you think of pain? Is it a broken arm, headache, sprained ankle, maybe a gunshot wound? Those are the things that I used to associate with pain, and they're pretty in line with the medical definition of pain. A variably unpleasant sensation associated with actual or potential tissue damage and mediated by specific nerve fibers to the brain, where its conscious appreciation may be modified by various factors. Do you notice anything missing from that definition? Do you see any mention of the emotional components of pain? Me either. In 1996, the American Pain Society introduced the phrase, pain is a fifth vital sign, meaning that when you walked into an emergency room, the initial assessment of your condition was based on 5 data points: pulse rate, temperature, respiration rate, blood pressure, and pain. This was brought about by a cultural movement that was adamant that we were undertreating pain, and patient satisfaction surveys were put in place in order to track the outcome and effectiveness of this new implementation. And what better way to promote these new policies than to tie physician and hospital compensation to patient satisfaction? A recent survey by the industry group Physicians Practice reports that 3 out of 10 doctors are paid bonuses based upon patient satisfaction surveys.
See?
And hospitals with better scores receive bigger payments from insurers. So naturally, administrators and physicians began to support this new movement.
Okay, so he goes into... Hold on.
And in 2012 alone, over 259 million opioid prescriptions were filled in the US. That is more than enough to give every American adult their own bottle of pills. I very quickly began drug seeking in order to soothe my emotional pain. And it was only a matter of months before the prescriptions had turned to alcohol, marijuana, and illicit narcotics. And as addiction always does over the course of the next decade, my tolerance continued to build, my life continued to be unmanageable, and my emotional pain stayed unresolved. It was like I had pressed a pause button on my emotional growth. I was managing my pain in the only way I knew how. And I wasn't alone. I believe that emotional pain is what's driving the addiction epidemic. Think of someone you know who struggles with addiction. I'm betting you can point to an element of unaddressed or unresolved emotional pain in that person.
So true.
Now think of a time you were in intense emotional pain and how desperate you were to stop it. What if you had been offered an immediate route to feeling better? Imagine for a moment breaking your leg in an avalanche. Now, that injury alone can be a fairly traumatic experience, but it's manageable. With short-term pain management, most would make a full recovery. But now imagine sustaining that exact same injury, only this time your close friend was skiing next to you and they didn't make it out of the avalanche alive. It seems so crystal clear to me that there would be two very different pain management strategies for what would appear to be an identical physiological injury. Only there's not. Emotional pain is toxic, it's pervasive, and society has programmed us to avoid it. We medicate with alcohol and drugs, sex and pornography,
So true.
even television and technology. And oftentimes, we're doing this without even knowing it. Our society is literally being defined by this pain. And now more and more people are dying every month because they're looking for solace in the only way they know how. It's the way they were programmed. Everyone has pain. It's unavoidable. And I have a simple summary for how we got here. We built a society that is filled with emotional pain and trauma. We combine that with a healthcare system that's intended primarily to treat physiological symptoms, and then we put Big Pharma in the driver's seat.
Bingo.
Aimed directly at profits with regulations that are easy to manipulate. And now we're in the midst of what the former Surgeon General called the worst public health crisis the nation has ever seen 2 years ago. It has since worsened, and what was then the addiction epidemic is now commonly referred to as the addiction pandemic. And here's a glimpse of where we're at today. The New York Times reported last month that overdose deaths rose by 19% in 2016.
That's in 2016, guys. All right, so I saw this many years ago, and I was like, he is such an inspiration, right? Now, 4 years ago, I found that 6 years ago, and this happened 4 years ago.
Tomorrow, an autopsy will be performed on Columbine survivor Austin Eubanks. He died yesterday, just days after we talked to him in Pasco County. He told us his story of survival and how he persevered through tragic times. Eubanks traveled the country hoping to help those struggling with addiction by telling his story. He was shot during the 1999 Columbine school shooting, and his best friend was killed. Yesterday, he was found dead in his home in Colorado. No foul play is suspected.
He couldn't kick it, guys.
And he was an outspoken voice for change, both in how we treat trauma and opioid addiction.
Today, at just 37 years old, Columbine survivor Austin Eubanks was found dead in his home. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Jacqueline Allen.
And I'm Tom Mustin. Glad you're with us tonight. Denver 7's Lance Hernandez joins us now. Lance, Austin talked openly about his battle with addiction to try and help others.
He was a big advocate for bringing addiction out of the shadows, telling people hurting emotionally to take a step forward to address the pain by calling a friend, talking to a therapist, or even speaking truth to a stranger.
I lost my best friend right in front of me.
Austin Eubanks was in the Columbine High School library when a teacher came running through telling everyone to get down on the floor.
And just minutes later, I was playing dead underneath a table next to a pool of blood. I had just been shot, and I'd witnessed my best friend murdered right in front of me as we were huddled together waiting for help to come.
He says doctors gave him multiple prescriptions for pain long after the physical pain was gone.
Every time I took these medications, it made me feel better. I didn't have to engage in the stages of grief. I could avoid that intense emotion.
Eubanks became addicted to opioids, then started using marijuana and other illicit drugs. After struggling for years, he finally became sober, put his life back together, and reconnected with his sons, who he had lost contact with for 2 years. He started traveling the country talking to others about addiction. He was in Florida 4 days ago.
I'm still a person that is healing from trauma, but I do make myself available if anybody reaches out.
Today, we learned about Eubanks' sudden death. His family sending a statement saying, unfortunately, Austin lost his battle with the very disease he fought so hard to help others face. Helping to build a community of support is what meant the most to Austin, and we plan to continue his work.
Sad. And I'm not making excuses for anyone. I really resent people saying that, but he was clean. He died. It shows that this can't just be kicked like some people think. If it could just be kicked, we wouldn't have an epidemic because it's not fun. Hey, One-Eyed Flo just gifted. And Dana Nelson. Welcome, Dana. Dana coming in with her different opinions. And we love it. We love it. She says, I'm one of her top 3. I love it. Who are your other 2 faves? I think it does depend on the person. I've taken opioids, and honestly, I had them after a surgery, and it was the most horrible experience. I don't remember what it was, though. It was one of those opioid things, and I got sleep paralysis, and I had never had sleep paralysis at all. And I could not move. I woke up and I was frozen, and it was scary. He died from a drug overdose, Alicia. He relapsed. So, all right, back to Bryan Kohberger. I just think that if we can bring some awareness to this epidemic and maybe possibly help someone, that's what it's all about. Oh, man, Gons, I'm so sorry you went through that. Pattern recognition, I'm so sorry for your loss. Anybody who's been affected by opioids in one way, shape, or form, there's got to be at least everybody here has at this point in time. Teresa says it literally tricks your brain and you can't be regular anymore. Jammer says it's scary. It happened to me once. It is scary to get that sleep paralysis. I don't like that. I was like, nope. Nicole K says, I put it off for 8 years. Not everybody wants to take it to get high. Some of us need it to function. Right. I mean, they give you these pills and get you addicted where you need them to just feel right. Here's a good example. Phentermine. Have you ever had phentermine? Any of you? Phentermine is a weight loss drug. Same for Adderall. Both addictive. Both addictive. See, sometimes our worst enemies are ourselves. And if you think on the people that you know that have died from overdoses, did they have unresolved emotional pain? And feel free to call in, guys. 727-755-6001. Taking your calls. Call in and let's talk. Let's talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. Your son takes Suboxone, but that has to keep going. Right. I mean, if he stops taking Suboxone, he's going to be in a world of mess. I get it, Les Gaunt. Not everybody's the same. And some people have better coping skills than others. Again, it goes back to how you were raised, what what kind of coping skills you have that you were raised with, and how you were raised to cope with things. A lot of us have parents that turn to substances to cope. A lot of, maybe like in my time, a lot of the parents would be like drinkers, alcoholism was big. It still is, but it wasn't really a pill addiction when we were growing up or I was growing up. It was more like alcoholism. How do you even know when a loved one is addicted? I think you can tell because that's really like they're worried about getting it. They're worried about being out of it. They're worried about how they're going to get it, things like that. Or they're running out of it before the prescription's up, if they have a prescription. Those are all red flags. And you have to be careful, like Proving Spooky said, with ADHD meds. Adderall is highly addictive and it's mind altering. It's mind altering. All these drugs alter your brain. And when we're giving it to kids whose brains aren't even developed all the way, Look at what we're seeing. We're seeing 20-somethings, early 30-somethings addicted to drugs, addicted to illegal drugs. Oh, I know. This Teresa or Diana, he's stoned, I think, but he's got his hand on Ashley's shoulder. But Ashley liked girls. So it was another thing that Bryan couldn't have. And this was rumored to be his girlfriend, but she was clearly a lesbian. Right, Dana. Like family dynamics, like your childhood, how your upbringing was, has a lot to do with it. But you know what? That phentermine, same thing. I took it to lose weight, and they say like taper off of it. And I did. I like cut it in half when I was done. And I still just wanted to do nothing but sleep. It was crazy. Jammers, I'm so sorry. They talk to you less, hiding things, hanging out with shady people, finding things like Renee said, needles, spoons, baggies with white residue, straws, things of that nature. They lie a lot. They're either awake or they're asleep, you know. Pupils dilated. Pattern recognition says all it takes is a month on Vicodin and you're hooked. I think it depends on the person, but I do agree with you. It is so highly addictive. Everybody's got emotional pain, and it's just how you cope, what your coping skills are. Can you cope with it? What do you use to cope? What have you watched people, in your life use to cope with their problems? Did they deal with their problems? Because a lot of us weren't raised, especially men, to talk about our problems. I mean, I'm going to be 50 in a couple months, and I know that guys my age were not raised to like be all emotional and up in your feels and talk about your misfortunes and your problems and what's going on in your mind. You just weren't. Like, especially my parents' generation. I remember when like my kids would talk to my dad about they have anxiety, and he'd be like, anxiety? What do you mean you have anxiety and you can't go to work? Like, you just go. You know what I mean? Like they didn't talk about that stuff. No, it wasn't Phentermine. Lynn Mo says, I don't think BK had a problem making friends. I don't know, man. It sounds like he had two different personalities, to be honest. And if you were making friends with people who were on heroin pretty bad, you're not really gonna, like, it's not gonna be hard to kind of make friends with them. But interesting to find out that he befriended a neighbor 2 doors down, and that's how he started doing heroin, was with this Saba guy. And then Saba dies, and then Ashley Flugel dies, and then Saba dies. And Ashley has an Instagram, and she makes a deal on there about the book Burned. And I was trying to find page 118 to see if there's something in there, because I wonder if this girl was someone that he liked a lot. Because it sounds like they were pretty good friends, and I think maybe he could have wanted more. I don't know. Yeah, do you guys just think the drug thing was just because he felt weird his whole life and he thought maybe this will make me feel less weird? I mean, that's altogether possible too. He could have went through this tummy tuck surgery with a breeze. Resilient kid. Here, let's talk about the other end of it. He could have breezed through this surgery. Resilient, like when kids get their tonsils out and they're fine. Who knows? Maybe he was sick of the visual snow. Maybe he was talking about it to his neighbor, and his neighbor said, hey, try this. Maybe it'll make you feel better. Was he tired of feeling like that and thinking, hey, maybe this will make me feel better? He could have been resilient, not had any pain. We have no idea. Could have went both ways. That's why I wanted to get y'all's opinion. I want to know what you think, because it could go either way. It could be that he just felt weird and he wanted to try something, and then he has a very obsessive personality, so he just went all into it. But just because he was a heroin junkie, he can still be intelligent. I think he's a very complicated, dark, twisted person. That's what I think. I think there was a lot going on. I think his parents probably felt guilt because he was, one of the fat kids, had a hard time. He was bullied for his weight. He did it for a woman. Sure, jammers. I mean, we all have done that. If you have a bad day and you go get drunk, you're using drugs to fix stuff in your head. We've all done it. Like, oh my God, I've had like a shitty day. I'm going to go drink some wine. I don't do that, but a lot of people do. He could have done it to fit in. That's what I thought maybe Gon's was, the tummy tuck, then the pain pills, then the heroin. But then you got to remember, he said he felt weird since he was 5. Oh, it's okay, Kendi. Kendi, you have to work on Labor Day. Boo. Boo. That's why I'm saying, Pattern, that I think Bryan Kohberger is a very unique, complex individual, if that makes sense. Addicts are always intelligent. Every rich person or successful person is an addict, in a way. My grandma's going through this from her surgery. She's strung out. She had to go to the hospital on our wedding day. I'm so sorry, Sam. Get her off those. Try to get her to wean off those things. In my early 20s, I would take nighttime Tylenol to sleep all day for depression. That is awful. I know. It's okay, Okie. It's okay. Holiday pay, hey. So I've got my neighbors across the street. It's okay. You guys don't have to call in. I've got my neighbors across the street. So listen to this. They said I backed into their car. Well, they park behind my driveway in the road. And they said I backed into their car. So they called the police and they're like, she backed into my car. I'm like, I didn't know I backed into your car. Why are you parked there? Anyway, long story short, they're having people over today. And they are parked blocking the driveway again. So I'm quietly listening out there because they were making a stink about having to move their truck earlier. People, I'm telling you, it's like, why? I'm speechless that they now even sell mushrooms. Well, because it's all about money, money, money. If you could only talk to his sister about any issues, oh my gosh, I know. I guess I'm just trying to figure out who this person is. You know, I'm not going to sit here and like zoom in on his fly and zoom in on this and zoom in on that. I'm just trying, I'm trying to wrap my brain around someone who can go out of their way to hurt for people that they didn't even know. It's just so crazy. I think that a lot more will come out. Did I miss something about BK? Other than that, he's the one that's accused of a quadruple murder now. Hey, Shamrock. Microdosing. Mom's tripping at home, yo.
Everybody does that. It's okay.
Some people don't dig the weed either. But it does work for a lot of people. Flo, it says that she stands by that. She has got all these ailments and she sticks with the cannabis treatment. Am I in LA? No, I'm in Florida. Jammers thinks the noise got too loud for BK in his head. That snow. Blinda Binda. Just an okie. I was exposed to illegal drugs when I was young. I didn't take and didn't want to. Grew up and studied medicine and never took more than an aspirin until I was 40. See, and that's why I think it's so shitty that people go on and on about the Idaho 4, considering that 2 of the students' parents had horrific drug problems. If you think that those kids would have any drugs around them, I think you're surely mistaken. And I think it's shitty to err on the side that you think they would. Because for all intents and purposes, they were getting their educations. They had career plans. They were moving on with their career plans. They had functional lives. There's no proof that there was any drug things going on there. And I think it's really shitty because I have a family member that their friend did drugs in front of me when I was a teenager, and it affected me. It traumatized me and it scared me. And if you think that it wasn't traumatizing for Jazzy and Xana to be taken away from their parents due to drugs, and you really think that they were going to fuck with that stuff and get an education and have their shit together, you got to be stupid to think that. I mean, for real. Think about what a slap in the face that is to Xana and Jazzy. I mean, it's traumatizing to be taken away from your parents. And to be taken away from your parents when they're addicted to drugs. And then people are going to sit here day after day knowing nothing about these girls. And sit there and act like they're some kind of druggies flushing $500,000 of pills down the toilet. Get the fuck out of here. It is so disrespectful. It's sick. It's sick. Then look at Madison Mogen. Look at her dad. He still looks like he's struggling, and her stepmother. You really think that they're going to be playing with that stuff? Hear that airplane? Coming in hot. I mean, come on. And Renaud, that's really irresponsible to say that shit. You don't know that she did anything more than drink alcohol that night. And if you say the shit again, you're going to get blocked. Because we don't bash victims here. There's no proof of that. And it's shitty for you to say that. It's really shitty. These are kids. How old are you? I'm sorry. That's what somebody just said, that somebody flushed down $275,000 of pills. That's what they were doing for 8 hours. Jeez, oh Pites. Teresa said, I watched an older episode of Surviving the Survivor before they arrested Kohberger, and they described the possible perpetrator, and it was BK to a T. I believe it. Nope. I disagree, Doc. You may have a disadvantage, but those kids were removed from the home. They weren't raised that way. But they certainly, Doc, suffered the trauma of being removed from their parents due to drugs. But they weren't raised around drugs. They were raised by family who wasn't on drugs. So no, they would have a better chance of not doing them. They're all dangerous. Alcohol, pills, it's all dangerous. Just be careful. But you have to be logical about it. They weren't raised in drug houses. Clearly, Madison Mogen basically grew up at Kaylee Goncalves' house. I mean, if you haven't picked up on that, I don't know what to tell you by now. Right? So we had Madison Mogen protected from the addiction, and we had Xana protected from the addiction by going to live with family members. So why would they be more likely to become an addict? Just curious where that mentality comes from. Because if they were taken out of the situation, they would have a better chance of not doing it. Let me know what you think in the comment section. And next time, you guys. All right, guys. See you guys tomorrow. Dance it out, motherfuckers.
I don't give a damn. I don't really care.
Bye, moderators. Thank you.
I don't give a damn. You talk way too much. I have heard enough about you and your problems. I don't give a damn. 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 You wanna be with me. You wanna feel something real, but I'm feeling differently. You're making plans to get to friends, but don't wanna face the fact that I ain't got time, I ain't got time, I ain't got time for that. Staying up late, sleeping all day, dreaming about Cadillacs.
So is that a drug? Or is it a cigar? JD, it's, you have to stand down.
He's nuts.
You want one Jennifer or two Jennifers?
Thanks so much, Jennifer.